What is going on, everybody? This is volume 4, and we're going to be wrapping up the sub-variants of the Lolli Variation with the Napoleon Gambit, which is e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, knight captures d4, knight captures d4, and after the pawn grabs your knight, we do not recapture right away. We play bishop to c4, and that marks the beginning of the Napoleon Gambit. Very interesting lines ahead. Black has several options, the best one being bishop to b4 check. That's the only bishop move. Protecting the pawn is a blunder because of bishop f7. And when they recapture, you got queen h5 check, and when they either dip out or, move or block, you scoop up the bishop, and that's that. So the reason bishop b4 check is the best move is because you really can't block with either of your minor pieces because they're going to capture, and when you retake, they have the move c5, which cements their pawn in your area. Instead, you want to block it with your c pawn. And black's only move is to capture. There is only one main move here, and that is to castle. But if you want to give up one extra pawn, you can suicide your bishop to f7, checking the king. And when they recapture, queen to b3 checks the king, and then you can pick up the dark squared bishop. Any other move than d5 is going to swing way in your favor, according to the analysis. So if they do push d5, pick up the bishop. If they made a mistake and ran with the king, you want to go ahead and pick up the bishop anyways, but you're going to have a much better game knowing that the middle hasn't been contested by them yet. If you do not want to give up that extra material, your best move is just a castle. And black would be a mistake to capture your b pawn because you would recapture with the bishop and you would have a setup like the Danish Gambit. Instead, their best move is to develop the knight, and the best square for them is e7, because if they went to f6, that would allow you to push the pawn. And where's their knight going to go? I mean, their best move is technically knight to e4, but you do have a couple tricks up your sleeve from this position. You do have bishop capture pawn on f7 now, and you're not giving up any material to loosen up the king and knock him out of the natural position and make them lose castling rights as well. Once they recapture, instead of b3, the square that you want to go to now is d5. And then once they move their king, you want to pick up the knight. So let's say they go to e8, you can pick up the knight, and their bishop is currently under attack from this position, so that's just one more problem that they're going to have to solve. You should have a solid game if you go down this line. Backing up now, let's look at some other options black has besides developing their dark squared bishop. If they develop their kingside knight, don't push e5, instead castle. And if they do take the pawn, you can go ahead and move your rook over. If they try defending it with d5, you can actually still go ahead and take it, because when they capture with the queen, you can move your knight to c3. Their knight is pinned to the king. Their pawn can't capture the knight because then their queen would be hanging, and when they move their queen, you can go ahead and pick up the knight. The only square that you wouldn't pick up the knight is if the queen goes to f5, you want to pick up the pawn then. The reason why that's the only square is any other place that they would go, they can push the pawn to f5, thus protecting the knight. But if the queen occupies that square, obviously they can't do the two things at once. And then next turn, you can go ahead and pick up the knight. And the last position that we're going to look at is if black pushes d5 right away. It is okay to capture with either the bishop or the pawn. According to the computer, the bishop is slightly better. And if they try to kick out your bishop and attack the 2, instead of moving it, come in and grab the pawn with the queen. It's okay. You can handle anything that they throw out the bishop. You're going to walk away with even material, even though you can't move it because your queen has no backup and it would fall from their queen. If they push their bishop to e7 looking to castle, you want to put your queen on d3 so it's got protection so you can move your bishop. If they do castle, then you do want to move your bishop. Pull it back to b3 and ask what they want to do with the queens. After that goes down, castle kingside, you should have a decent game. The reason why they can't immediately threaten your bishop with pushing the c-pawn is because you have this nasty trick. And it doesn't matter if they capture it or just move forward. It basically scores the same because now you have a passed pawn on the e-file. So to go into more detail, if they take your bishop, they lose the queen. And if they just choose to put the king on e7, capture the queen, and when they recapture, now push f3 to protect your e-pawn. That's going to be a valuable pawn in the endgame since it is a passed pawn. Your bishop's not in jeopardy. You can work on developing your queenside pieces, and you can castle queenside, which will come with check. You'll have a great game from there. Backing up before they pushed the c-pawn, if they compound things, like bringing out the bishop to add more pressure on the d5 square, then you can bring out your knight, adding a defender. And the move c6 still looks scary, but you're good. You can throw the bishop to g5, pinning the knight. If they get your bishop, you could always push up your pawn, and you're going to win your minor piece back. If they keep compounding things and unpin the knight, it's still okay. You want to go ahead and castle. And let's say they go ahead and capture your bishop. You want to recapture it with the pawn. They can't capture it with the bishop, so they're going to have to move their bishop if they don't want to lose their piece right away. You are down a minor piece, but no matter what they do, you're going to get it back. They have to move the bishop, right? Once they move it, you can push up your pawn again to d6. Now their bishop is being hit, and they can move it back and prevent castling, but in that case, you can move over your rook from h1 to e1, and their whole castle will come tumbling down. They have to be okay with losing their minor piece. You can pick it up this way through a bunch of exchanges, because if they try saving it, it's going to be game over. You have bishop capture knight attacking the queen. They can't recapture your bishop. That's just another way you can pick up your minor piece back. They can try blocking it and losing the queen that way, because if they try picking up the bishop, then you have pawn d7 check. They can't move forward because of the pawn obviously promoting, and then you have checkmate this way. So they're going to duck behind the pawn. But then you have pawn captures c8 with a queen, double check. They capture, queen d7 check. They boogie back to the only square available, b8. Then you have queen e8 check. If they block with the queen, they lose, so they can attempt to run. But then you have knight to d5, forking the king and queen. It is a faster checkmate on knight to b6, but I just think it's better just to take the queen, get it out of the way. Easier calculations. The king goes back to c7. You got queen d7 check, king to b6. You got knight d5 check, king to a5. Then you can move your rook into place, getting ready to put it on a4. They can try blocking with the bishop and just take it out. And that's basically as far as that goes. So if they do try holding on to that minor piece advantage that they have, the game will end. But they're in trouble. If they are okay with losing the minor piece back, just exchange castle queenside, and you should have a healthy game ahead of you with a one pawn advantage on the queenside. Last thing I will mention is after they unpin the knight and queen, you castle queenside. Their best move is actually moving the queen to a5, and now your bishop is no longer pinned. So you can either exchange down or find some other method to the madness. I got 25 seconds to wrap this up. I'm just going to say that a lot of these lines that we're going to be covering in this mega tutorial, you can't find any other information on lines on YouTube. If you dig deep enough on Google, you can find some. So I apologize if I'm not up to par, but I'm going at this, by the horns by myself. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you on the next one.